everyone, my name is Allie and welcome to my channel. And today I'm going to be doing my mid-year book freakout tag. I look forward to this every single year and I love watching other people's mid-year book freakout tags, but I also love making them. So I'm so excited to finally get to do this video. I was rewatching my video from last year and I remembered that I had talked a little bit about some of my stats from the story graph, so I figured I'd do that again this year. So as of July 19th, when I'm filming this video, I have read 44 books in the year of 2024. 84% of the books I've read this year have been fiction, 16% have been nonfiction. My top 3 genres of this year so far have been romance, contemporary, and fantasy. My 2 most read authors of this year have been Christelle Dabeau and Emily Henry, which is not surprising. I've read 3 Christelle Dabeau books and I've read 2 Emily Henry books. And then my average rating for this year has been 4.16. And that is definitely different from other years in the past because sometime around like late last year, I kind of decided to stop rating every single book that I read. And that's mainly because of like some discussions, especially in like the writing community, of like, is it okay for writers or like potential authors to rate books negatively, like publicly? And so I've just kind of like thought about that for a while and I've decided to not like publicly negatively rate books. I will talk about books that like I didn't really enjoy, but I just figured that if it makes other people uncomfortable, I don't want to do that. So trying to find like a happy medium between those two things. So that's why my average rating is so high. Those are the stats I wanted to talk about from the story graph. I will do, obviously, as I usually do, an end of the year video kind of going through like my deeper stats and stuff like that. So definitely keep an eye out for that video as we near like November, December. Really good incentive to subscribe to my channel and stick around. So let's get right on into the first question. Best book you've read so far in 2024? And so I was kind of going back and forth with this question of like, what book do I want to include? And usually I'll try to like think about it in the context of all the other questions, like do I want to spread the books out, whatever. And so this time I decided on a book and I chose Evil Eye by Ita Fromm, and I loved this book so much. I have an arc of this book, but it did come out last year and I was able to listen to an audiobook this time. So it's kind of nice to have like a physical copy, but I did listen to it as an audiobook. This one follows a young Palestinian American mother. She is really struggling at work because of some racist comments that were made by another employee. That's really kind of the entire like setup for this novel. This is a very character-driven book, and if you know me, you know how much I love character-driven narratives. So I think that's a lot of the reason why this worked for me, and I absolutely loved the complicatedness of this main character. She is not perfect by any means, and a lot of her flaws are very present within this novel, and I think that that is a really interesting perspective, especially coming from a marginalized author, and having that come through in her character that is also marginalized. I feel like too often we can have these books that center around a marginalized character and they have to be presented as like these perfect angelic beings instead of actually having like normal realistic human qualities. And so I think that's what I really appreciated from this book, is that she's a very complicated, complex, not always perfect main character, and I really resonated with that. So highly recommend if you are looking for any books that follow a Palestinian main character. This one was fantastic. It was so good. The next question is best sequel you've read so far in 2024, and for this one I didn't really have very many to choose from this year because I have not read very many series. I feel like last year was definitely the year of me reading like a lot of fantasy series and stuff like that. But this year I did finally finish a series that I had been meaning to finish for forever, and that was the Mirror Visitor Quartet. And I have some complicated feelings about this specific series. There are parts of it that I really love, and then there are parts of it that I just felt like did not fully deliver on what I wanted it to, but I did choose this book as my favorite sequel. This is the second book in the series. This is The Missing of Claire de Lune by Christelle DeBeau, and I read this earlier this year and I really enjoyed it. I think this might be my favorite book of the series. I'm not sure. It's like a tie between the first and the second book for me. I do highly recommend this series. I will say it's very weird, and I always bring that up whenever I'm talking about this series because I want people to know that like this has like a very weird, strange, like Alice in Wonderland meets Beauty and the Beast kind of vibe to it, and it's not going to be for everybody. Especially the second half of the series, it kind of takes a really weird tone shift, but the first two books I absolutely love, and The Missing of Claire de Lune is such a strong and compelling sequel. So if you are intrigued by this series, I would highly recommend checking it out. Just like manage your expectations. Keep an open mind, come into this series with like no real expectations, because it's hard to describe and it's hard to give you kind of like that context. So I did really enjoy this book, and let me know if you check out this series and what you think, because I need to know. My thoughts are still kind of like all over the place. But yeah, loved the sequel. The next question is new release you haven't read yet but want to. And for that, I ended up choosing Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. And this book is one that I have been seeing literally everywhere. There's also another book that I could think of that is by Ashley Poston. I can't remember the title, but it came out this year, and that's also one that I want to read. But I chose this one because A, I've been seeing it everywhere, and B, I feel like it's a book that I would really enjoy, and it kind of fits the vibe for like the summertime. And I've never read an Abby Jimenez book ever. I do own one, and I just haven't ever picked it up, which is so weird. I feel like I should definitely read her books because a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I really trust, absolutely love her books. And this one has a really interesting premise, and basically it's these two people, and they both kind of have this like weird kind of like pattern going on of where they will date people and then break up, and then immediately afterwards, or like very quickly afterwards, that person will meet like the love of their life and like get married and live happily ever after. And like that is such an intriguing premise to me. It sounds really interesting, and it's kind of giving me a little bit of like Just My Luck vibes, which I love that movie. This book just sounds really interesting, and I think that I'm gonna love it. I just haven't been able to find the audiobook from my library, so fingers crossed they'll add it to the, you know, Libby database or whatever. I definitely want to read this book, and I know that it's part of like a standalone series, so maybe I need to read the first two books and then I can get to this one. The next question is most anticipated release for the second half of 2024. And for me, I feel like this is the obvious choice. I feel like everybody's gonna say this one, but I really don't have another answer, and that is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. As you guys know, I am a huge Sally Rooney stan. I have loved all of her books. My favorite one, I think by far, is Beautiful World, Where Are You? That book just like destroyed me in a very particular way. I also love Normal People, and I did enjoy my time reading Conversations with Friends, but Beautiful World, Where Are You is like one of my favorites, and I am so excited about Intermezzo. I think I'm gonna love this book so much. I don't even really need to know like deeply what it's about. That doesn't really matter to me. It's just the fact that it's a Sally Rooney book. I just know I'm gonna love it. Like, I don't need to know any information. But I do know that this has to do with chess, which I think is gonna be really intriguing, especially since like I did get into that one Netflix show. God, I can't remember what it's called now. Oh, The Queen's Gambit. Everybody remember that show on Netflix during the pandemic? I loved The Queen's Gambit. I ate that up. And so I think that it's gonna be really interesting to see what Sally Rooney does with this sort of like chess sort of narrative. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. I did email the publisher like a few months ago begging for an arc. I didn't get a reply back. No, they never hit me up. So that's okay. I'm still like I'm gonna be fine, but I'm really crossing my fingers that Libro FM with their ALC program, that they will give me an advanced listener's copy of this book. I would be so excited. The next question is biggest disappointment of 2024. And for this one, I had a few different options, honestly, but I felt like this is the one that really truly disappointed me to my core, and that is Feybound by Sarah L. Arifi. I went into this book with such high expectations, and maybe that's my fault, but like I was so excited to read a romantasy book written by a Black author and have it be this like really beautiful, like sweeping fae-centric sort of narrative. I've been really wanting to read a romantasy that focuses on like fairies or like the fae, something that is kind of like not really going to replace this like Sarah J. Maas's of the world, but it's going to like at least be an alternative. And unfortunately, this book just really did not do it for me personally. I think for me, where this book went wrong is the fact that like it really focuses very heavily on world building and info dumping, and a lot less on developing characters, developing relationships, and not having these parts of the narrative where we are engaging in some sort of action. I felt like a lot of this book was told instead of shown, which I don't think that that's like a hard and fast rule that you always have to be showing and you can never tell anything. I don't believe that, but I do think that some fantasy authors, especially recently, can get really caught up in creating a like an aggressively perfect world. They forget to worry about like characterization and relationships and like how these people interact with each other. And so some of these fantasy books start to read more like a historical text or like a history book and less like a romantasy. And that's another thing that I kind of had a qualm with, is that like it's categorized as a romantasy, it's promoted as a romantasy, and yet the romantic relationships in this book take a huge backseat. Like I'm talking third row backseat. Like they're barely even there. They might actually be in the trunk. And so that was a really big issue for me personally, is that I just didn't feel like there was any actual substance to the story. It was mostly about building the world and trying to get you immersed in it. But for me personally, the way that you immerse me as a reader into a fantasy world is through characterization, is through the way that these characters interact with each other, and seeing kind of like, you know, the hierarchies or like the friendships or the romances or things like that. Of course I love world building, but we don't need to know everything. That's all I'm gonna say, is we don't need to know every little detail in order to be immersed. Okay, I need a drink. I always go on a little bit of a rant at that section, but I think for me, it's just like, I am actually disappointed. It's not that I like hate the book or that I'm like wanting to attack it. It's more so me being like, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. You know what I mean? And that's what hurts the most, is that like I wanted it to be good so bad, and when it lets me down, that hurts like 10 times worse. The next question is biggest surprise of 2024, and for me, I ended up choosing In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. This book is one that I took with me on my trip to Massachusetts, and I did not expect for me to love this book so much. I read this on the plane there and back, and I was sobbing. Like I was actually like openly crying. It was so good, and I really don't want to talk too much about what this book is about, mainly because I went into it semi like not really knowing the whole story. And it was a really good like, oh, I didn't know that this is what the story was going to be about. and I feel like that works for this one. So I don't really want to talk too much of what it's about. The way that I do describe it though is that it's about this woman in her 20s. She's living in New York, and she is in this really great relationship with her boyfriend. Everything is working out fine. And then one day she ends up having this dream, and it's very, very vivid. It feels very real. And in her dream, it's set 5 years into the future, and she is with somebody completely new, and she's in this great relationship. Everything is great. And she starts to kind of like in the back of her mind be like, am I not supposed to be with my current boyfriend? Am I supposed to be with this other person, this like magical other like stranger? And she starts to forget about the dream, and then 5 years later she meets this guy, and he ends up being the boyfriend of her best friend. And so it's like a really interesting kind of dilemma, and I don't know, I love this book so much. Like I said, it made me cry. Bring the tissues if you're gonna pick this one up. It's just so good. It's so good. It's so like a me kind of book. It really tugs at the heartstrings. It's really about like friendships and those kind of like interpersonal relationships. And this book has like a very like sort of magical quality to it that I absolutely love. The next question on this list is favorite new author, debut, or new to you. And for me, easiest question to answer, and that is Eve Babbitt's. I love Eve Babbitt's. I actually just recently picked up another one of her books. This is Eve's Hollywood. I am also currently reading Sex and Rage by Eve Babbitt's. I am so obsessed with her writing. It is incredible. She is my girly. I just love her writing. I love it so much. I love the way that she writes about LA, about California. I love the way that she brings these stories to life. They feel so realistic. I don't even know what to say. Like, I love her writing style so much. It feels very like conversational. It feels like she's just kind of like telling you these stories, and like you're her close girlfriend, and like you're just like sitting there at a cafe and she's like telling you these things. I love it. I love it so much. I highly recommend you check out any of her books. I started with Black Swans. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite books of the year. So yeah, highly recommend checking her books out. The next question is newest fictional crush, and for this one I was a little bit like, I don't really know what to talk about for this one, because I feel like this gets harder every year as I get older. But for me, I ended up choosing one of the new Emily Henry boys, and that is Miles from Funny Story. When I read this book, I just like immediately fell in love with him. There's something about him that I love. He really reminds me of Nick from New Girl, which he is my man. I love him so much. And so having that sort of comparison just like really cemented him as my new book boyfriend. But then again, I feel like every Emily Henry man is my new book boyfriend, so what are we gonna do about that? I don't know. But yeah, loved this book. This was another one that was kind of in the running for me to choose for like my favorite book of the year, but I don't know, it's so tough. It really is. I read this as an audiobook, and I really want to read it physically, so at some point this year I think I'm gonna pick this book back up and read it physically for the second time, or I guess like the first time, but like my first reread. Love Miles, he is great. The next question is newest favorite character, and for this one I kind of chose two characters, and they are both from Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. We have Opal, the main character, and also Arthur. I loved Opal so much. She was so feisty. She is like the perfect like older sister character, and I could really relate to her in that sort of way. And then I also love Arthur because he's just like one of like, he is the type of male main character that I really love. He is kind of reclusive, a little shy, but also very smart, and kind of puts up with like the female main character shit, and I just love that. I love that about him. He is just so perfect. I almost want to reread this book because I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot how much I love this one. So yeah, love Arthur and Opal from Starling House. They're so good. The next question is book that made you cry, and I feel like I have to talk about this book again because like I said, it made me cry, and that is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. Like I said, this book made me sob on a plane. It made me sob on a plane. and I was not okay. I really wasn't. It was just like, it got me so deep, and I did not expect for it to even like scratch the surface, so I was very shocked. The next question is book that made you happy, and this is one I actually forgot to answer last year, so that was weird. But I ended up choosing First Base by Ali Wygand, and I loved this book so much, and it really made me happy because it was the first like adult baseball romance that I have really enjoyed. This book was just so much fun. You could really tell that Ali loves baseball, and I felt that really come through in the narrative and in the characters and stuff like that. And I don't know, I loved this book so much. It was so much fun. It basically revolves around a Major League Baseball player and a photographer for that Major League Baseball team, and they kind of get into this sort of like fake dating relationship drama, and it's so much fun. I had such a great time, and I can't wait for the next book. I can't wait to see what character we follow next time. And yeah, this book just made me so happy. I just remember like smiling the entire time I read this one. So yeah, perfect book for this question. The second to last question is most beautiful book you've bought so far this year, and that was a little tough for me because I haven't really bought very many books this year, but I have received a lot of books from publishers, and so I chose one of those, and I decided on Please Stop Trying to Leave Me by Alana Saab, and I love this cover so much. I don't know if you could see it. Look at how beautiful that is. I love all like the flowers, and the eyeballs right here are just so freaky, and I love just like look at the lilac on the back and on the spine. It's so pretty. So yeah, definitely the prettiest book that I have received this year so far, maybe next to Funny Story. I also love that one. And the very last question of this tag is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So funny enough, I actually have an entire stack of books that I'm supposed to be reading, and the first one in this stack is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I am currently 30 pages into it, so not very far, but I am really liking it. And I actually started this book because supposedly it is the book club book pick of like the Eras Tour book club that the people who are in the Eras Tour are doing. And so I'm like, you know what? I have to read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I have it, I own it, and I've been meaning to read it for forever. So yeah, I picked it up and I am really enjoying it. I just need to get back into it. The next one is another one I need to get back into, and that is The Do-Over by Suzanne Park. And I am currently 93 pages into this book, I believe. And it's really fun. It's a great rom-com. It really is funny. So if you're looking for a book that is like definitely really a rom-com, highly recommend this one. Another great romance book that I'm currently in the middle of is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I actually read about like 100 pages of this book a few years ago, and for some reason put it down, never picked it back up. So I'm actually restarting it, and I don't remember what page I'm on. Oh, here we go. I'm on page 15, so not super far into it, but I am loving it. And as you guys know, I'm a huge Ali Hazelwood fan, so I feel like I have to read this book. The next book is one that I actually brought with me on my trip up north to like Northern California, and I ended up not even like picking it up, but I'm still including it, and that is Letters to a Young Poet. And I really want to read this. It's very short. I've heard really great things about it, and I'm super excited to pick it up. And the very last one is another one that I have been in the middle of for quite a while, and that is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. And I remember really loving this book when I picked it up. I was 59 pages into it. I do think that I need to restart it though. I don't really remember a lot of what happens in this book, so definitely need to refresh my memory. But yeah, was really enjoying this when I read it, and just need to kind of like finish it up. So yeah, those are all of the books, all of the questions, all of the answers. I had such a fun time doing it this year. I've read a lot of really intriguing books. I mean, this isn't even half of them. Like I said, I've read 44 books so far this year. I have a Goodreads goal of 50 books, but that's kind of just like a baseline goal that I do every year, is I want to read at least 50 books. So I'm not really sure how many I'll actually get to by the end of the year. Maybe like 70. I could see that happening, maybe 80, but we'll just see how many slumps I end up getting in from this point until December. So yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed my answers for this tag. Definitely let me know down below some of your favorite books so far this year. Let me know some of the books that you are anticipating for the rest of the year. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are down below, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!